What if there was a president of the United States who loved media attention yet publicly insulted reporters? We are not talking about the current administration. We are talking about the much-loved Theodore Roosevelt. Joining us to chat about a moment in history where the former president was on trial against these journalists is host and legal correspondent Dan Abrams. His new book is called Theodore Roosevelt for the Defense: The Courtroom Battle to Save His Legacy. Good morning to you, Dan.
Hi, Molly.
Great talking to you. So this is a civil case, a libel case, in fact, right?
Yeah, so this was a case brought by the head of the Republican Party in New York. He'd formerly been the head of the National Republican Party against Roosevelt, suing Roosevelt for libel because Roosevelt accused him of being corrupt. And what Roosevelt had done is, in the context of Roosevelt supporting a particular candidate for governor at the time, he went after Barnes and others and distributed it to the media. Literally wrote something out and then handed it out to various members of the media. It was published, and Barnes sued Roosevelt, saying, "You called me corrupt. What you said isn't true." And you have this, the former president, this iconic former president of the United States in Theodore Roosevelt, testifying for 8 days in his own defense in a 6-week trial. And in fact, Franklin Roosevelt, a young Franklin Roosevelt, ended up testifying for Theodore Roosevelt in this case as well. And somehow it's become a footnote to history.
It's fascinating. I always wonder, when you study historical figures like this, and as you learn more and more about them, does he become more likable to you? Because I think there are so many things we don't know about past presidents because of technology and computers and the World Wide Web.
Yeah, so look, for me in researching this book, there are definitely aspects of Theodore Roosevelt which I would criticize. But on the whole, I came to admire Theodore Roosevelt even more in researching this book and in watching his words on the witness stand. Remember, we've got a 3,000-plus page transcript of the trial that served as the yoke of this story. And so we were able to really get a sense of what Theodore Roosevelt was like. He's being cross-examined by a lawyer who's trying to embarrass him, who's trying to undermine his legacy. And seeing how Roosevelt responds to that attorney really gave me newfound admiration. And I shouldn't say newfound, I should say even more admiration for Theodore Roosevelt than I already had.
Was he a real character? Because I feel like that's what we see sometimes in pictures and in even cartoons and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was very outspoken. He was very comfortable speaking his mind. And I think that's also what made him such a compelling witness in this case, is that he was never one to shy away from a good fight. And, look, and that would resonate today. Theodore Roosevelt would be a very good candidate, political leader, and handler of the media today.
Last year, you published the New York Times bestseller, Lincoln's Last Trial. This seems like a logical follow-up to that book. I think a lot of people would say that Lincoln and Roosevelt were arguably the two best presidents the Republican Party produced. Do you see any similarities between the two?
Well, there's definitely some similarities. I mean, look, Roosevelt admired Abraham Lincoln. And he would ask himself, what would Lincoln do when he faced difficult decisions? So there's definitely a thread here. And one of the most interesting threads is that the Lincoln book we did through the eyes of the person who transcribed this great trial that Abraham Lincoln was involved in as a defense attorney. That transcriber was Theodore Roosevelt's #1 choice to be his vice presidential candidate in 1904. It's kind of an amazing connection between these two books. But there's no question that Roosevelt and Lincoln both were moderates who wanted to figure out how to get their agenda move forward without becoming too radical. They believed that if you went too far towards what people would view as outliers, that you wouldn't get anything done and you'd lose politically. And I think that's one of the things that Roosevelt most admired and often quoted about Lincoln.
I love it. Dan, it was a pleasure talking to you. Always been a fan of your work. Congratulations on writing some wonderful, smart books.
Thank you, Molly.
Appreciate it. And again, the book is called Theodore Roosevelt for the Defense, The Courtroom Battle to Save His Legacy.